Greetings adventurers, this is Lorne, your guild advisor, and welcome back to this week's installment of Cuts and Changes for DanMachi 4, where I highlight the differences between the original light novel source and the anime adaptation, as well as provide additional context for what you see in the show. With episode 10, we finally see the source of Ryu's despair, the juggernaut that decimated her familia, and right now it really seems that Belle could use a hand. The anime did a great job at displaying the gruesome entrance of the juggernaut, but there are some additional details that anime-only viewers may want to know. Let's start the breakdown. The episode starts with a minute-and-a-half long recap, and then we are taken to a scene with Mari hearing the wail of the dungeon while underwater. In the anime, this scene is divided into two parts, but in the light novel, Mari's scenes are just one event that's about the length of one page. Not only does she recognize the wailing of the dungeon as dangerous, but she remembers a similar sensation from 5 years ago. She tries to close her eyes and ears from the threat, but remembers the rest of the Xenos and also Belle, who she knew was in the water capital. Because of her thoughts of Belle, she pushes past her fear and swims off. After the Juggernaut is born and starts its banquet of death, there are quite a bit of scenes involving the fearsome monster, making quick work of adventurers as it eliminates the virus contaminating the injured body of the dungeon. I appreciate that the anime didn't do too much to hide how vicious and gory these scenes are. Adventurers are being picked off one by one and are shown being impaled, dismembered, and even eaten. There's even more details in the light novel, showcasing the scale of the calamity, with over 50 adventurers from the hunting group being killed. The water in the dungeon was turning red with blood, and several body parts and corpses of adventurers were being devoured by monsters. Originally, the expedition crew was supposed to be able to somewhat make out the blood in the water when they're looking down from the waterfalls. Instead, the anime has the party hear the pained screams of adventurers, which isn't too dramatic of a change since sound can travel pretty far, but seeing blood in the water definitely would have been a striking scene. When Jura is telling Ryu and Belle that he is summoning the monster that decimated Hestia Familia, Belle's actually supporting Ryu by holding her up as she struggles with her fear in the light novels. At times, the anime may feel a bit awkward as it seems Ryu and Belle are just standing around, letting Jura talk for quite a long time. It's even mentioned that Ryu is desperately trying to keep herself calm, but she can't stop herself from shaking violently. The anime also seems to make Belle look a bit clueless as he says redundant lines like Ryu belonging to Hestia Familia, or that Jura is responsible for the deaths in Hestia Familia. These lines do not appear in the novel version of these scenes, and Belle is already well aware that Ryu is from Hestia Familia, as well as Jura being involved in their deaths, as Bohr said it himself during episode 8 when they found Jura. It almost seems as if Belle said these lines to remind the viewer of these facts, but it just makes him seem slow in the head. However, I do appreciate seeing the grave in the flashback updated with the Hestia Familia emblem on the flag. When it comes to Juggernaut, it is like the immune system of the dungeon. It is sent to take out extreme threats, but has only been summoned once before, during the trap that Jura and Rudra Familia set for Hestia Familia. Ever since the deities came down to the lower world, the monster had only appeared once. Not even Loki and Freya Familia have seen it, nor the legendary Zeus and Hera Familias. Normally the prayers and will of Uranos keeps the dungeon in check from doing anything too radical, but the gods' prayers aren't as effective on the lower floors, and the excess damage to the dungeon caused the Juggernaut to once again be born. Uranos wanted to keep Juggernaut's existence a secret because he did not want a formal regulation to be made regarding the conditions needed to summon the monster. The god did tell the Xenos as they sensed Juggernaut 5 years ago, but because they were occupied with the invasion of Gnosis, they were not available to prevent this second summoning. Uranos wanted the first incident to remain a secret, and trusted that Ryu would never test the taboo after what happened with her familia. Unfortunately, Uranos did not know that Ryu failed to kill Jura, and now, after 5 years of research, the last member of Rudra Familia has succeeded in calling forth despair. When Belle turns to go out of the room in order to help Boris and the other adventurers, the sound of monsters howling could be heard in the light novel. Also, when Belle starts to run off, Ryu actually grabs his arm because, as I mentioned before, previously, Belle was supporting Ryu, so she was close enough to stop him from physically moving. Four's party ends up entering the room, and we finally get to see the full body of Juggernaut. When the monster bites the adventurer in half, rather than cut away to Uranus like in the anime, the light novel explicitly mentions that the adventurer's head dropped to the ground and split open, causing everyone in the room to grow pale. Perhaps a bit too graphic for TV, but I was impressed with how much gore the anime did show. The novels also mention that when Juggernaut destroyed Estrella Familia, they were a bright up-and-coming Familia. They were made up of primarily young female adventurers, and had 2 level 3 adventurers and 8 level 4s besides Ryu. This was a Familia that would have stood tall alongside Freya and Loki Familia in the present day, but they were wiped out by Juggernaut on that fateful day 5 years ago. When Juggernaut starts taking out the members of the hunting party that Belle befriended, Belle loses his cool in response and picks up a greatsword, classic Belle, and charges into battle. The light novel is slightly different as Belle actually manages to intervene in time to stop the Juggernaut from attacking those adventurers temporarily, but they do kick the bucket later on anyway. I do want to point out the light novel illustrations for this battle between Belle and Juggernaut are great, and I love the intensity on Belle's face. When Belle attacked Juggernaut, the monster recognized Rabbitfoot as the biggest threat in the room, and switched priority to him. The main strengths of Juggernaut were its incredible speed and overwhelming strength. The monster simply moved at a speed that betrayed its size, which took away the one advantage that Belle had against the Moss Huge. After Belle's greatsword is destroyed, he tries to use Firebolt on Juggernaut, only to meet the taste of his own fire reflected right back at him. Juggernaut has the ability to reflect magic attacks. If you read the novels, this magic reflection ability was actually teased during the initial slaughter of adventurers by Juggernaut. An adventurer pulled out his magic blade in response to the monster appearing, and in the very next scene, all that's left of the adventurer is a burned corpse. One thing that's puzzling about the anime adaptation is that Belle's armor seemingly disappears after his firebolt is reflected. But if you look very closely at the scene, you'll see that his armor quickly pops off when he's hit by his own spell. This kinda makes you question Welf and how reliable Belle's armor is if it just comes right off from one rebounded firebolt. Originally, Belle's armor is actually destroyed by the Juggernaut's claws after Belle's right arm is cut off. When Belle loses his right arm, he raises his left arm in an attempt to block the claws of Juggernaut, intending for the claws to slide along the metal on the arm protector, but instead his armor was crushed. I imagine this was modified for the anime as a cost-saving measure that is hopefully reflected in episode 11, but it is still disappointing as I was hoping to see less cut corners in terms of animation for the second to last episode of the core. Something notable at the very end of the episode after Belle's body is flung back to the edge of the water is Ryu yelling out his first name. Normally, Ryu uses his last name, Kranel, but in times of crisis, such as the Black Goliath, Ryu switches to using his first name. Ryu, being an elf, is incredibly reserved, but her occasional uses of Belle's first name suggest an increasing sense of familiarity with him. But will that mean anything in the end if Belle is seemingly out of commission? Overall, I believe the episode did a great job at showcasing the gruesomeness of Juggernaut, but at some points it did feel like the episode was stretching itself thin as the amount of pages adapted from the novel only totaled about 32. This meant that the majority of the episode consisted of dialogue and exposition by Uranus and Jura, which somewhat disrupted the pacing between Juggernaut's birth and eventual full reveal at the end of the episode. I have some ideas on some ways the pacing could have been relieved, but that's a topic for a review video I'll do after episode 11 airs. A cuts and changes video is not really the place for that. In other news, the latest danmemo side story that released alongside episode 10 contains major spoilers for something that will happen at the end of episode 11, so I highly suggest that any anime-only viewers not watch it until at least finishing episode 11. I'm really hoping that the anime staff does an incredible job with the next episode, as it'll be the last episode of the current core, and then we'll have to wait for core 2 of DanMachi season 4, which will start back up in January. If adapted properly, the next episode should make you shocked and stunned. leaving you to agonize over the wait for the second half of the show in the coming winter season. But hey, not everything is so bad. Ryu is just announced to get her very first figure, and it's a 1/7 scale. Now I'm just waiting for pre-orders to open up so I can finally have a figure of my favorite character. If you found this video informative, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more DanMachi content. Don't forget to follow me on my socials, and this is Lorne, your guild advisor, signing out.